I'm going to talk about my vision, my dream of building economies of well-being that go beyond the cancerous economic beat, heat, treat economy we have now. And I want to show you that it's possible. I think that the dreaming thing that we did this morning and Luca's wonderful image of her aunt's place in Cape Cod. Thank you. You know, the dream that Luca shared with us that I know her aunt has in Cape Cod, that gives me hope that these things are possible. So I'm going to rip through these slides. This is pictures at an exhibition of happiness, and I'm going to tell you why I believe happiness should be the national business plan goal. So that's the secret of happiness. It was in a Chinese tea bag my friend showed me. To want what you already have, to live the life you've already been given. There's one thing that's true that I've come to understand. We are spiritual well-beings. This owl flew at me once, and I caught her in my lens. She didn't hit me. But we are spiritual beings, and I'm glad we had that reflection on B this morning. My dream is to co-create, that means to work together, an economy of well-being and ultimately enduring happiness. Jefferson's Declaration of Independence stated very clearly. In my book, on the front cover, you'll see something really important, the Fibonacci sequence, the sacred spiral. As in nature, so in accounting. Luca Pacioli, the father of accounting, with Leonardo da Vinci in 1505, wrote the Summa Arithmetica, the treatise on double-entry bookkeeping, which we still use to this day. This is the new balance sheet. It's perfect. It's beautiful. I'll show you what you can do with Excel. And there's John Perkins. Everyone knows everyone knows John Perkins is? The economic hitman, the guy who really uncovers how this whole system works. Amazing man, very courageous guy, who I think believes that we can actually transform this world into a more compassionate and peaceful one. He's part of the Pachamama Alliance. Dream changers, that's what Pachamama means, dream changer. If we change the dream of the children, he said, as the Shawar told him, you change the world. And Bobby Kennedy is my hero in terms of, I'm a measurement guy, I'm an economist, I'm a forest economist, but Kennedy said in 1968, just before he was killed, the GDP measures everything except that which makes life worthwhile. It can't even comprehend measuring the joy of our children's play, but yet it counts nuclear warheads or cleaning up after hurricanes. And this is the landscape of Nunavut, where I work with the Inuit in the Arctic. So here's the original business plan. How are we doing, Mr. President? Well, I'll show you some evidence. Actually, the word happiness is pretty cool. Eudaimonia means well-being of the spirit, or good spirit. And Aristotle said that happiness is a sense of well-being resulting from achieving excellence in the fulfillment of one's function. So the question I ask people, why do you think you're here on this planet? What's your vocation? Your vocation is that inner voice. You can call it God, you can call it whatever you want. But how are we teaching our children to get in touch with that inner voice, with wisdom? Are we teaching our children the capacity for wisdom? I don't think we are. So here's the bad news. Well, maybe it's good news. I think it's good news. The number of very happy people hasn't changed at all in the United States. About 35%. In fact, it's lower than it was after World War II, and yet the incomes have increased and GDP has increased significantly. Here's some other maybe good news, bad news. Here's the genuine progress indicator, which Redefining Progress developed, but kind of has run out of steam and funding. Economists sort of laughed at us in their attempts to. Actually, we said the GDP is like an income statement with one line. It doesn't know how to depreciate social or human or natural capital, and it treats every expenditure as plus. That's insane. Most accountants would roll their eyes and that doesn't make sense. There's depreciation costs. So when we consider environmental depreciation costs in the U.S., the negative line, you can see that we're running a significant deficit with the ecology. Even Joseph Stiglitz now recognizes, in working with Sarkozy in France, that we need alternative measures to this outdated measure. People forget that John Maynard Keynes devised this national income accounting system as a way for Britain to tax its people to pay for the war. And the war is over. Now, if we map actually happiness surveys with GDP. This is 190 countries. World Value Survey. You can see where I live, Alberta, is right next to Luxembourg. There's the United States, Canada, and there's little Bhutan, which has the gross national happiness as its national policy. My argument is we could optimize happiness, according to this graph, at about $10,000 to $20,000. So we could probably throttle down our economies considerably. And I'm going to show you how we can do that. And still, actually, I would argue, increase happiness. There you can see Cuba up there too, Costa Rica. Here's the really bad news. That's one thing I love to talk about, is this is the true picture of irrational exuberance. That purple graph, which hardly anyone has seen, is the total amount of outstanding debt in the United States right now. $55 trillion and counting. What's interesting is Herman Daly, who some of you know, inspired me to think about this further. And David Corton actually came to Edmonton and said, we got to write a book together about this graph, because this is the real story. Fractional reserve banking and the Federal Reserve, this is going on every country in the world, with the possibility of Cuba. That debt is unrepayable. What's interesting is the debt can only be repaid by increasing the GDP, but only the interest payments on the debt. So you have, right now, this is a shock and awe graph. The average American, of every dollar you spend, 20 cents, it's my calculation, of embedded interest costs. So imagine one day a week you don't have to work for interest. Wouldn't that be a compelling presidential campaign? And it's possible. And up there on the eagle and the banner, what does it say? E pluribus unum. Anyone know what that means in Latin? Many are one. It's what the Wizard of Oz said when he was taking off in the balloon, waving to Dorothy. Why did he say E pluribus unum? Watch the movie. It's not a child's storybook. It's about what was happening in the United States at the turn of the century. The yellow brick road. Dorothy's slippers were not ruby red, they were silver. It was about monetary policy. Here's the really shocking news. This is the amount of money that's being printed right now in the United States. The only reason that my U.S. currency isn't worth anything is because all of this is, you're all being sheltered from it. The money supply is increased. That spike is a 9-month period. The timeline is 1918. That means we are like Argentina. You're printing money out of stock like it's water. And we haven't seen the rest of the shoe drop yet. Now here's the father of accounting. I ask my business students, why do we measure anyways? Why do accountants even compel you to keep a balance sheet or income statement? Would you if you didn't have to? I'm a business person. But Luca, working with Leonardo da Vinci, said the first thing accountants do is you need to measure what matters. You need to take inventory. And here's where he was working. He was helping Venetian businessmen who worked in a guild society in the 16th century. Now, the interesting word competition, everyone thinks is about warfare. Business students learn that, but it actually means to strive together in Latin. Now, the interesting thing, Luca never defined the word profit. You know that? Never. And he never defined the word wealth. But it turns out Adam Smith didn't even define wealth. Maybe he was Scottish. Maybe that's why he didn't understand. In the Old English, wealth means the conditions of well-being. Wella, and the letters TH means the conditions of well-being.